thank you. Thank you for the intro. And it's funny that you mentioned the 30 years of experience because that made me kind of reflect a little bit. But I was trying to figure out what would be the best approach for this. And I said, all right, maybe I'll do this as if I were sitting on the porch with a new respiratory therapist, just being, going in full what I would call unk mode and sharing. So that's what I'm going to do. I put this together and I hope you guys enjoyed. Hopefully there's tons of questions afterwards that I can share or answer for you. So just a second. All right. So the question I will start with is, are you your greatest advocate? When you think about who's out there advocating for you, is it you or are you expecting it to be someone else? And what I'll tell you is that there was a big part of my career where I kind of expected others to do it until later I realized that it is actually my goal, my role to do that. We're going to talk a little bit about how we do that and then how we get there. But I think all of it will be kind of easier to explain if I just kind of start off with my story, right? Yep, this is going to be old Uncle Joel sitting telling you his story of back in the day. No, it won't be that bad. But I want to tell my story because often when people hear about someone who they perceive as successful, they believe that this is what their path looked like. They walk straight up these steps and quickly hit their goal. But I'll tell you what the reality was mostly like, and the reality for me was a lot more like this. Take a little bit more time to get there, all over the place. So when people say that their ladder is, it's not a ladder, it's a jungle gym, mine was truly a jungle gym. So again, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and you will eventually hear all the times that I've had to advocate as we go through this talk. So when I break down my story, if I was going to make a collage, it would look like this, right? Kind of all over the place. So most people don't know. You're wondering, why is Will Smith on this thing? And that's because I grew up in the same neighborhood Will Smith went to. I know about that basketball court. It was real. For those of you guys who are young, go back to Nickelodeon or to one of those channels that may have some old Fresh Prince of Bel-Air shows on. But I will tell you that I grew up in a really, really rough neighborhood in West Philadelphia. They call that neighborhood the Bottom. And I had to figure out what to do. I couldn't stay in my neighborhood. Parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I had partial scholarships as an athlete, but my family flat out couldn't afford it. And on top of that, we didn't even have a car, so they couldn't take me to the school. Okay. So I joined the Army. That's this guy here. Yep. Joined the Army absolutely just to get out of my neighborhood, but also as an opportunity to figure out what I was going to do, because not only did I not have the money, I did not know what I was going to do. I went to a VOTEC where I was studying to be an architect. And I'd spent about 6 months, because it was a VOTEC, we spent some time there working with architects and realized it was the most boring thing. They had elevator music going in the background and no one was talking and engaging. Everyone was just sitting there quiet at their desk. And I was like, this is not going to be for me. So I went to a recruiter, and a recruiter talked me into becoming a medic. So I joined the Army, went in as a medic. And I joined the Army during right in the middle of conflict. It was when Desert Storm was Desert Shield. And I was like, I need to get out my neighborhood because I'll probably see less violence in the Army than I saw at home. And I was right. So I went in the Army during Desert Storm, became a medic. So now I come out from being a medic. I get to do that job for about a week or so. And then I realized that as doing it for a civilian, and then about a year goes by and I'm like, I don't think I can do this forever, especially after I had, had an experience with someone who was my elder, and he was complaining about his back hurting because we were lifting up a 300-400 pound patient. And I was like, I felt like I could do more, but on top of that, I did not want my back to be hurting like his and still be doing that. And I realized probably not something I'd be able to retire from. So then I thought about going to respiratory school. So worked a full-time job, part-time job, did my reserves, and went to school full-time. So I went to school during the day, worked a full-time job 3 to 11. Every other night or so, I would work as a drug and alcohol rehab. And then I did my reserves. I had 2 days off a month. And I spent those with my girlfriend, who eventually became a wife. Then after that, that was at Millersville University. I got a job at Nemours Children's Hospital. 6 months after I started working at the Children's Hospital, they asked me to be a charge therapist. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the best job I've ever had, being a charge therapist. I get to help people. I get to help folks. and I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Year goes by. I said, man, I don't want to do that anymore. I really like research. So we had an animal lab. So I worked and talked to my boss. He knew that I had a biology degree and a chemistry minor. He knew I was like ready for this stuff. And he goes, man, I could get you in the animal lab 1 day a week where you're going to be the staff for, when they have to do ventilator focused studies, you'll be the one that'll be intubating pigs and putting A-lines in and all that stuff. I said, man, I'm going to work in the lab for the rest of my life. Then a year after that, I said, man, I do not like killing animals. I didn't like killing pigs. And so I said, I got to do something else. So then I became a PICU ICU specialist. I said, oh my gosh, we don't have one. I went to the ARC conference. I heard about them talking about these specialists. The only thing they did was worked in the ICUs. And I said, this is perfect. But we didn't have one. So I talked to my boss and I said, hey, I was at the ARC Congress and they were talking about this clinical specialist role. And he said, well, we don't have that, Joel. So if you want, you can write a job description and maybe we'll hire somebody into the role. So I wrote that job description. And that job description sounded almost exactly like me. I mean, it was pretty much me without a photo of me on it, if you know what I mean. It was like, must have, I listed it. I made sure I fully qualified. So I got that job, believe it or not, and worked as a PICU therapist. ICU, a clinical specialist that said, oh my gosh, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then I got bored again. And I realized I really liked educating. And I said, oh my gosh, that's what I want to be. I want to be an educator. So I go to Christiana Care and I said, I want to be an educator. I want to be an educator there. And I talked to someone who I knew was working there and they helped me get a job as the staff development specialist. And I said, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life and eventually become a professor. And then I realized I did not like that. Exactly what happened is I had someone come to me, ask me a question about our Draeger ventilator. And I told them the exact page and paragraph, what line it was, the answer was on. And I realized I did in repetition. And then it finally hit on to me that I liked leading folks and guiding folks. And then I became a manager and I found my path. And then I said, I'm going to be the director of respiratory care, and that's what I'm going to retire from. Again, I get a phone call. I make some, talk to a few people, and my old director from the Moores had left, and I got asked to come back. And here I am. I got that job, and I was 40. And I said, oh my gosh, am I going to do this for the next 22 years? And it just became this layer of me trying to find my next step, and I felt like I was stuck. Felt like I was really, really stuck. And I was at this time the director of respiratory. I felt like I was learning, but I felt like there was more that I could learn. But I also felt like there was more to it. And that's when I realized that there was a lot more advocating to do. And this is where, I will come back to the story and tell you how I got there. But as you hear that, I moved rather quickly, right? From being a staff therapist to charge therapist, that was about 6 months. Charge therapist to research, about a year. Research to being a clinical specialist, that was about the 2-year mark. Then I was at 5 years, I was already, worked and been a clinical specialist. And then next, I'm in the educator role, did that for 7 years. Really quick movements. But a lot of it was from speaking up and telling people what I wanted. And then those opportunities came and being bold enough to pick it and be able to pivot. And I tell you this not to brag, but because the main thing is, if I can do this, so can you. You can go out and advocate by telling people what you want, telling them where you're interested. And then opportunities come and you're prepared and all that stuff. You'll be, you know what? Actually, spend some time. And I came up with a formula. We're going to call this formula Brown's Career Advancement Equation. That's right. I put up my own equation. And here we go. So this is what I got. So for career advancement, it's going to equal this. You need to have, number one, performance, plus preparation, plus relationships you develop, plus visibility, and then you multiply that by opportunity. And what that will equal is career advancement. Now, I know that I have a whole bunch of science-based folks on here, so I do have a warning here. This equation has not been approved by the FDA, CMS, AARC, your manager, Sesame Street, or your mother. It's simply how Joel Brown has observed careers over the last 30 plus years. There have been no randomized controlled trials that were harmed in the development of this equation. but it works in my head, right? The people that I've seen do well have performed well, they have prepared, they have built relationships, they had good visibility, which is what we're talking about here. And then last is the opportunities come. So let's break these down. So first things first, performance. One of the things that they used to always say in the Army, and my dad used to say, because I'm actually third generation military, is showing up is half the battle. You got to at least be there, right? You have to show up, and you have to consistently deliver excellence on your role if you want people to advocate for you or have the ability to say something and do something, right? So how do you do that? First of all, say yes early and often, especially early in your career. Would you like to do this? Yes, because you don't know what you don't know. You also don't know what you don't like. You don't know what you do like. There might be something that surprises you and you're like, boy, I had no clue I was going to like or want to do that. And next thing you know, you do. I found that often, right? Number two, be on time. I am very rarely late. I've run this business for 4.5 years. I've only been late for 3 of my meetings, and 2 of them had to do with IT issues, right? I'm very rarely late. Being on time is, again, super important. You have to walk in being willing to learn to be a high performer, right? And then also, if you want to be performance to be the thing that people talk about with you, is you got to go in going, no role is too low or too high if the mission is worthy of my time, right? So I don't care if you ask me to help put together the sign at a Congress conference or if I need to speak. There's no role too small if the mission's there. And that speaks to your ability to perform, right? Then get the thing done every time. There is no excuse to drop off. Always got to get it done. If you want that P, that's for performance, got to get the job done. Finish early and ask for more if you liked it. One of the things that we used to say in the military, it was kind of sarcastic, but it was to build the way you think. And if you were doing push-ups, you jump up and say, more PT, drill sergeant, more PT. We like it. We love it. We want more of it, right? That's you asking for more, right? And usually you did not like or love it, but at times you knew it was good for you, right? So asking for more if you like it, right? Then share your expertise and willingness to become the expert. That means either I'm going to be the expert or I will say, I will go and do this so I can become the expert. All will lead to performance. People think of performance as I executed and got this done, but it has to do with all those other things too. Are you on time? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to become the expert if you already aren't? These are all the things that will have people advocating for you when you need to speak up, okay? Next one, preparation. Doing all that, but not being prepared, you'll struggle, right? Example of that is I was ready to take my VP role, but I didn't have a master's degree. It was literally the reason why I got my master's. I was not one of these people who's like, I need to hit the highest space, to get a terminal degree. I realized that was not a glass ceiling, it was brick. And the organization I worked in, you did not become a VP unless you got a master's degree. So I went and got it. Right? So credentials and certifications are important. Schooling of all levels and concentrations, whatever is needed. If you think you need to go on that path, you need to have that. It's part of preparation, which is investing in your knowledge and your skills and growth. Going to conferences. I learned so much. I've been to a lot of congresses and I've learned so much. If it's not by sitting in the audience, it's going to the open forum and then eventually speaking. You learn through the speaking process. Okay. Respiratory Girl journals, doing your abstracts and peer reviews, and then teaching others is a way you can prepare yourself. You can prepare yourself for whatever opportunity is coming, right? So it's either your colleagues, so I'm going to skills fairs and conferences, or preparation through community, HOSA, health fairs, things like that. I can tell you that by teaching people in the community, that will take you to the next level of being prepared if you ever want a job like in education or even as a leader, right? Or if you want a job at the bedside that requires you to talk to patients. I always tell folks, go home and try to explain it to someone not in healthcare, a loved one that will give you feedback. And if you can explain it to them, you can explain it to anyone, right? One of the biggest preparation fails that I've seen was a person that came in as an educator and they were going with me to go teach residents about just something as basic as CPAP, and they start going eye time and PEEP and blah, blah, blah. And they didn't know what those terms were. And I gave that person that feedback. Go home Teach this to your at the point that that person had a wife. Teach this to your wife, and she's in finance. If she can understand it, then they will. But you can't just throw out terms, right? That's how you make sure you're prepared. Now, one of the other areas that most people underestimate is you're building relationships. This, to me, if you were going to put if you were going to change this formula, I believe this is the one that might be a squared, right? Relationships are so important. And that's because what you know will help you, but it has limits. But who you know is limitless if it's combined with what you know. To put it simple, I used to tell folks, you could probably get to manager with strictly how much you know. But if you know the right people, the who you know, with that same knowledge base, you're unlimited to where you can go. I'm a living testimony of that, right? So building genuine connections and strong networking. And what I mean by this, don't be fake. I don't want you to be fake. There are going to be people you meet that you need to know, but you're not going to have a connection with them. And you may have to keep that connection totally work-based. But there are going to be some about the majority of folks. And I truly believe that we go into healthcare because we're generally good people, that you're going to find people that you have something that connects with, a passion for something that's going to be very important, right? So who are the people you should know? These are the people. Do you know your manager? Do you know your director? Most of you, do you know your senior director? How about your VPs? Do you know your CEO, COO, CFO, CNO, your chief healthcare HR person? Do you know them? Do you know human resource person? Do you know your HR business partner, quality and safety director, lean department, medical directors? Getting to know these folks, not just in a work environment, but outside of work, meaning you don't have to go outside of work, meaning can we just go and have coffee? These are the people that are going to advocate on your behalf. These are the people you're going to be able to, for lack of a better word, shoot your shot, right? And tell them that, hey, this is what I want to do. And they may not be able to do anything right then, but they remember that time I talked to Bob, Lisa, to Larry, to Jen. I talked to them and they said they wanted to do this. And you know what? This just came up. Maybe I'll reach out to them and see if they want to do it. Or I'm just going to go tell people that they're ready and that I talked to them and said they were interested. Okay. And part of that is getting a mentor. And when I say getting a mentor, I don't mean one, you should have multiple. But it's important that you know the difference between mentorship and advocacy, because sometimes people get them mixed up. An advocate is someone who knows exactly what you do and know that you do it well. And every time they will pick you. Budget, right? Budget. This person's really good at budget. Let me go get Bob. This person's really good at teaching families. Let me go get Lisa. This person's really good at teaching staff. Let me go get this. They will always place you in the areas that you thrive. But a mentor knows what you want to do, not just what you're good at. So here's an example. I had an advocate when I was a senior director who knew I was great at finance. I was good at doing a budget. I could really do that well. But my mentor knew that I don't like doing it. I just was good at it, but I didn't like it. And she knew I wanted to do other things. So she would put me in places where I could do that. So you want to make sure you know the difference between a mentor and an advocate, right? And while you're building these connections. And this is the one. You want to have multiple of them, right? So you want someone in the same path as you. That means someone that's a colleague. There's someone that's in this lecture right now that you should connect with, that's in the same spot as you, that you see as a mentor, because you can bounce things off of them and they understand exactly where you are. Someone who's in the space you want to be. That means I want to be that. I need to go meet with that person and spend time with that person, because then they'll know exactly where I need to be. Someone who is skilled where you are weak. This person is really, really good at that. They're a great speaker. This person is really good at staying calm. This person has the best poker face ever. Find them, mentor. Someone who knows your strengths and can tell you when you're falling off. Hey, you were always really good at that, but now I've seen you do better, right? That's good to have a mentor that does that. Someone totally separate from your profession. And this is probably the most important one. They are our reality check. I don't know if y'all know, but folks, we're in healthcare, we're not 100% what I would call normal. Yeah, let that marinate for a while. And I'll tell you why. How many people do you know outside of healthcare that could say, yeah, you know what? I was taking care of somebody, they passed, they died. And 5 to 10 minutes later, I just moved on and went to breakfast. This is not normal. So having someone who is separate from your profession will reality check you and make sure that you're checking in on yourself and you don't normalize things that are not supposed to be normal. Okay. Having someone who grounds you morally is super important. I'll tell you about the mine. There is a Mosafar who is a Ahmed, who is a respiratory therapist, staff therapist, and he grounds me morally. I have a nonprofit now, and it's 100% because of Mosafar. Mosafar came from Bangladesh. He came with just a couple $100 in his pocket, washed dishes while he went to school. Eventually finished respiratory school, started working, brought his wife over, sent her through nursing school, brought his family over, and then went back to his home country and built a school. He grounds me morally like that. No matter where you get, you must always look back. Always look back and go back to like, how can I bring someone up the way I have? So he is truly my mentor. And I think about him. We donate to each other's nonprofits often. Okay. Now, often I hear people talk about their failed mentorships. And it usually is someone saying, yeah, I reached out to this person as my mentor and they never talked to me. Well, I'm going to tell you this, and this is a reality check. It is your responsibility to engage and manage the relationship with your mentor, not theirs. My mentor is my old boss, Jane, and I have not worked for Jane in well over 7-8 years. Do you know I call Jane? I actually set up dinners with Jane. I go drive 2 hours to go and spend time with her. I ask her often about her mother, her family. Like I know her well, and she's always been a great advocate of mine. Jane does not have to do, I do not even expect Jane to do that, even though she knows I see her as my mentor. And that's because of recognizing that Jane probably has multiple people out there, and the ones she's going to pour into are the ones that pour into her, and I'm willing to do that. If you value them as a mentor, you must pour into them. Do not sit on the couch waiting for them to knock on the door and see how you're doing. They will do that periodically, but don't expect it. So one of the things that we're going to talk about next is visibility in that equation. And actually, it's mentioned that if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? More importantly, does anyone care? Right? So you have to share your value and let others know your impact. I would call it, like some of you guys have heard of it, the humble brag, right? Right? You're not going around going, I did this, I did that, I did this. But if someone starts asking you about something that's a topic, you should feel free to share the things you've done, right? You should feel free to say, yes, I've done that before. Yes, I'm interested in this. You have to share your wins. When you're meeting with your boss, are you telling them about your successes? Are you telling them about the things? I can tell you, I believe I lost some years because I was a keep your head down to get the work done, and someone will tap you on your shoulder. And then I slowly watched folks that I felt like were my colleagues. They were moving up and I was standing still. And I realized that they were the ones opening their mouths and talking. You all have heard the saying, closed mouths don't get fed. You have to say or share, right? Or if you get an abstract that is it's accepted by the ARC, right? They just came out, people are now finding out. You forward that to your boss and ask them to send it to their boss to show that, hey, look, I got this accepted. You use LinkedIn for that, to share that I am doing things, especially if they align with where you want to be. If you're just quiet all the time, you could get passed over, but it should be humble. You don't want to be out like, doing a parade down the hall. It's more of like a badge. If I use another military reference, if you ever watch our uniforms, it has all the things that we've done on those ribbons. So I don't have to go yelling, but someone sees it and they know I've been accomplished. So you have to let people know that you're accomplished without quote unquote bragging. And you'll know the difference because all you got to do is watch faces. If every time you go to tell somebody how well you're doing, everybody gets up and leaves, you're probably doing it wrong. Okay. So when asked, find the right opportunity to share. And then if you really, really get good at it, it will be something that you don't have to force, right? I'm just sharing my knowledge. I'm just sharing my wisdom. I'm sharing my interests, not I'm bragging. Okay. So the last part is opportunity, right? And so when opportunity comes, you got to recognize it. You need to prepare for it and you need to be ready for it. Nothing's worse than you do all those things, right? Well, you don't do one of those things and the opportunity comes. For example, say if my vice president role came up, because they don't come up every week, right? You only have a handful of them, even though I had a big, large system and had, well over 1,000 people under me, right? But those roles don't come up often. And when it does, if you're not prepared, it's like a moment. Like you need to be prepared. Like, what if I didn't get my degree? Believe it or not, I got my degree 7 days before I got offered the role. 7 days. Imagine if I'd took one semester off. I would have not gotten that role. So you have to be prepared. And then you have to look for those opportunities. And the way you do it is you have to keep your head above water. Sometimes we get so deep into the work we're doing, we're not looking at the world around us, right? And opportunity waits for no one. When it's out there, it's not waiting for you. It's here now and it's going tomorrow. So if you look up and it just gets taken from you or someone else gets it, it's because you weren't looking. And the best way to look is keep your head above water, pause every once in a while and look for what you're looking for and making sure that you're advocating around that. But more importantly, this is where your advocates, that the people you've talked to and you've shared with and your mentors, they will keep their head above water for you. I can tell you almost every opportunity I had, except the one, I think it was two, the research lab one and the one when I became a PICU clinical specialist, those two I found myself because I made them. All the other ones was someone tapping me on my shoulder. I worked for two places in my entire career. I worked at Nemours. And when I went there, I got the job as the educator. That was because someone in the lab told me about the educator job and said, I'm going to go and tell them you should get it. And I went to Christiana and I worked at Christiana until my old boss tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I'm about to retire. You should come back. And I went back to Nemours and I was there and I became senior director. And then my old vice president became president, tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I'm about to have a vice president role. I want you to come back. I did not go. That was, someone tapped me on my shoulder. So if you can't keep your head above water, make sure someone will do it for you. Are you willing to consider that doesn't align with what you believe is your path? Is a big one. Because sometimes someone will bring an opportunity and that's not what I was about to do. But remember, it's not a ladder. It is a jungle gym. So there are times that you're going to need to go ahead and just say, but I'll take that just in case, right? Next part is not all opportunities are good ones, but they all should be explored. So as I tell you, be willing to go to an area that you're not planning to, but at the same time, don't feel like you have to take them all. There are some you have to look into and go, yeah, is that really a good opportunity for me? Or is it just an opportunity? And pause on it, reflect on it, use your mentors, use your friends, figure out if it aligns, okay? And then use your mentors to explore the potential of opportunities, not advocates. Because an advocate is going to just continually find the thing that you're good at. Your mentor knows what you're looking for and will try to find other opportunities that will align what you're good at, but also align with where you want to be. So now you did the Brown formula, which is performance plus preparation plus relationships plus visibility multiplied by opportunity equals career advancement. And you've gotten here. You've done it. You got to the place you're at. What I'm here to tell you is unless that was where you truly wanted to end, which most time you don't know, that's not going to be good enough. And that's because my favorite quote is right here. Success is never owned. It's only rented. And rent is due every day. You can't keep going back and telling people about the thing you did 8 years ago, then 10 years ago, and then now it's 15 years ago. Eventually, no one cares. Usually once it hits, you need to go find the next thing, figure out where the next success is for you, for your organization, for your patients, for your community. You got to go find the next thing, right? And it sounds exhausting. And no, I'll be honest, it probably is. But you do have to go and look for what is the next thing that I do, because folks that are advocating for you would like to continue to tell someone all the great things you're doing. If they only can tell you one story, tell them one story and tell that one story. Eventually people go, is there anything else that Joel has done, right? So the more you're gathering these wins, the more people are likely to speak up for you on your behalf. So what you have to do is figure out what's next for you. What's the next thing you're going to do? And I'm talking about next for you. And what I'll tell you is this. So back in the day, they used to have a long, actually Walmart still has it, but they used to have toy stores. They have Lego castles, a whole section of it. And you see all these different castles. And you'd walk down there, and if you were raised like me, we couldn't afford for me to have them all. I probably could get one. So I had to make a choice. And I find when people are hesitating to advocate for themselves is because they don't want to make a choice of what they're advocating for. I'm afraid if I tell them that, then that's all I'm going to do. Well, you heard my path and you didn't even hear the whole thing, right? That I'm afraid of what I would do. Well, you know what? That's not true. You could actually be an expert at move on, but you got to pick one. And because when you're sitting with your mentor and you tell them what you want, then they know what to go and advocate for. But if you go, oh, I'll do anything, well, that's not specific enough. And I can tell you when I have people tell me, oh, I say, what would you like to do? I'll do anything. Yeah, that's not specific enough because I don't remember when anything comes. But if you're specific and say, I want to be the next clinical specialist, that I remember. But anything, now there's other people who are more specific that I'm going to go to. So you're going down the aisle, you have to pick your castle. But then, of course, when you get there, this is what you find. 1 billion pieces. And most people panic. But in between that is what you call the journey. The journey is taking those pieces and putting them together and not being afraid of the journey. Okay? So let me tell you how you fix that. The first thing you do is you figure out your castle. You have to choose it. Pick what you want to do. I want to do this next. Again, not just like a Lego castle. You don't keep it forever, right? You're picking that for now. The next thing you would do, you would open up and you do what? Find the instructions. You go through, find all your instructions, and you try to read them. Now, that was a lot of pieces. I don't know about you, that when I look at all those pieces, that looks almost impossible. So what I would do next is I'd identify somebody who's done it before. This is a mentor who's done it before. And I say, if you're looking for a role, you can find the instructions in LinkedIn, right? This role here, I'm going to go through LinkedIn's jobs that they post, and here's that job, and it gives you every bit, tells you the formula, what you have to do to be able to achieve it. But it's not easy. So I need a mentor. So I go get a mentor. The mentor can tell you, all right, so this is what I did. Here's some schools you could go to. This is the type of training you need. These are the people you need to talk to. All those things they're going to be able to do. But after that, the reality is you have to do the work. You cannot expect someone else to do the work for you. You can find it. You can get your instructions. But after that, you got to roll your sleeves up and get the work done. And then after that, you finally get it. And guess what you go back to? You go back to choosing your own castle, a new castle. I tell people, like, once you make that success point, enjoy it, celebrate, relax. But then after that, you got to roll up your sleeves and start figuring out what's next. What's the next thing for me to do? Where do I need to start, advocating for myself and getting the information and putting together that formula? Okay. And then the important part is just like with Lego pieces, right? You have it, and you put together your castle. No one ever throws the Lego pieces away. You keep them because that's skills and knowledge that you'll eventually use somewhere else. And you may buy the next castle, and now you have skills and knowledge in the place of little bricks that you can now make it even better than the one on the box. So remember, when you're trying to figure out what's next for you, first you have to choose your castle, find the instructions, meaning ask someone how to do that or look it up yourself, right? Then next, after that, identify someone who's did it or someone who's willing to help you get there. Roll up your sleeves and do the work. Okay. So when you're trying to figure it out, you got to figure out, what do you want to be? What are you advocating for? Why do you want someone to speak up for you? Right? What does your job description, that job description look like? It's the instruction manual. Talk to someone who's done it. Identify skills needed for connections. And then do you have mentors? We talked about that, right? All over the place, different types of mentors. Will you consider moving left or right to get there instead of going straight up and down? And then you have to be willing to do the work. We cannot negate it. So I told you about, getting up to director and then stopping. And I was like, man, I thought that was it for me. I actually was listening to folks who said, as a respiratory therapist, right, you become director. And they never let anybody do anything else. And I was starting to believe it. Well, I went through this program called Leadership Delaware, which I eventually became chair of the board for. And at Leadership Delaware, I got to meet the person who single-handedly changed my life as far as my professional life. And that was Judge Josh Martin. He's a real person. Judge Josh Martin was, so in the Leadership Delaware program, we had to go and speak to, we would go and speak to someone who was going to do the presentation. And we had to do their introduction. So I went to they gave me, I'm like, why did they give me a lawyer? I'm a respiratory therapist. Why are they giving me a lawyer? And so I go there, I meet him at his law firm. He's all the way to the top of this big building, and it's beautiful office with a living room and a kitchen and all this stuff. And we were supposed to have a half-hour meeting. He sat down and we talked. Well, Judge Josh Martin went to tell me his story, how he started off his first job. He swept floors for barbershops. He made a small business out of it where he'd just go around sweeping all up the hair, buffing the floors and cleaning them. Then after that, he said, you know what? I know I can't sweep hair forever. He said, I'm going to go to school and become an engineer. So he became a chemical engineer with a focus on explosives and started working for the company here in Delaware. You guys probably heard of DuPont. And yeah, I wrote generic on there because I'm going to put their names on there. But he was at DuPont, where he pretty much has a couple patents on explosives. And then he realized, I don't want to blow things up forever. Maybe what I'll do is become a judge. So he went to law school and became a judge. Right? Total random switch, but realized that he saw the hands of justice being delivered inappropriately, and he thought he'd be a judge. Then he was like, you know what? I don't want to just be a judge. I want to be a superior court judge. So he became a superior court judge here in the state of Delaware. He was the first African-American and the youngest superior court judge we've had so far. And then he was like, wow, I don't want to be a superior court for the rest of my life. I'm young. But one thing I never did is I never became a CEO of a business. So he went and became the CEO of Verizon here for the East Coast, which back then, I forgot what the name was, but Verizon, basically the East Coast, he was their CEO for the Delaware, Philadelphia area. He ran that business. And then after that, and he's like now at retirement age, really, he said, you know what, all that time as a lawyer, I never became a partner. And in his 70s, became a partner. And what I learned from that moment was that leadership is transferable. And each step that he told me about this, he said about how he met someone or engaged with someone, asked what his plans were, and he was willing to speak to them. And then later someone taps him on the shoulder or he finds an opportunity to pursue it. So as you can imagine, I go meet with him. It was supposed to be a half-hour meeting, and now we are good to, a good hour, 45 minutes. He kept going back out to his admin saying, hey, I'm going to be here longer. Cancel this appointment, cancel that appointment. I mean, we were vibing, just vibing. And I had to go back to work because this was lunchtime. And I head back, I called my wife and I said, man, oh man, Rashida, I just had the best meeting of my life and I'm going home because I don't want none of those knuckleheads at the hospital to kill my vibe. And my wife, in all her wisdom, said, you better take yourself to work because we have bills to pay. So I went back to work, but I went a changed man. I realized that I could pretty much, my leadership skills were transferable. And as long as I advocated for myself, I spoke up and told people what I was interested in, that if I do all the other things and prepare and have all those opportunities will come and I will be ready for them. So what did that lead me to? No lie, not even a week later, I am on my way back from lunch and I get up, going onto the elevator and I have my lunch tray and our COO walks on the elevator. And I look over at him. I had just started doing administrator on call, but I was still in the director role. And he says, I said, hi, how you doing? Where you going? I hit his floor. I knew where he was going. And I was like, all right, here we go. Let me do it. And I turned to him and I was like, hi, my name is Joel. He's like, yeah, I remember you. You're doing admin on call now. I said, yeah. I said, I'm in this program called Leadership Delaware, which you are paying for right now. I think it's coming out of your budget. And he laughed. And I said, I just wanted to let you know I have learned a lot. And I realized that I want to learn, I want to lead. And I want to lead anyone that will help this organization and help you. And he goes, oh, really? And he goes, like who? I said, anyone, and I mean anyone. I said, I have my team now. I'm willing to, and I want to keep my respiratory team. But if you gave me anyone from the people mowing the grass to physicians, I'll do it. Elevator door opens. He takes a step out, turns around back to me and says, where are you going? I said, I'm going to my office to eat. He said, come with me. And I followed him in his office, which led to a very long conversation. 2 months later, I was senior director, because what I did not know is that they had just the senior director over periop had just resigned, and they didn't know how they were going to fill the role. So they gave me nursing areas, sterile processing, the GI unit, the inpatient, outpatient GI unit. I had nurses and sterile processors and all those folks reporting to me. Do you imagine if I would have just let that elevator open and start talking about the weather and then let it close? Do you think that opportunity would have showed up? I don't think so. I had to speak up. So the key is, do you have an elevator pitch? Because elevator pitch, you got a hot second to say what you're doing and what you want. And yeah, sometimes it doesn't work. And I can tell you, I've only had that elevator moment twice in my entire career, but you got to be prepared for it. So let me tell you how you prepare. So first thing you want to do is introduce yourself. Hi, my name is, and where, right? And share your background. How they may, like he's actually helped me with that by saying, you're the person that's doing admin on call, but you want to figure out, how do I connect myself to this person? Yeah, I did this, or I'm working here. I went to this school. I graduated from Millersville. I graduated from here, right? Something that connects them, right? And then after that, you want to provide a little detail if you need to. I didn't have to, because he knew that I was admin on call. Then connect yourself to their work, their goals, or what they're doing. I knew that there was something that went out there that recently that mentioned that that we had gaps in leadership. I knew we did. I knew that they had a few leadership roles that were vacant, but they were not traditional roles that would go to someone like that was a senior, director of respiratory care and sleep medicine. So I just put that out there, that I was willing to lead the team. And he asked me the specifics, and I told him the specific is any team working within the hospital that you need help with, right? So you got to tell them what you want. You got to ask for mentorship, opportunity, new role, project. You need to be specific. And I know it's scary to be specific, but you have to be. And then guess what you do after that? You wait for a response quietly. 6 seconds minimum. So after I said, and I'm willing to, take wherever you need to help this organization, quiet. See, that was 6 seconds, and you thought that your computer wasn't working, right? 6 seconds seems like a lifetime when you're in an elevator. So I say 6 is good, 8, that's another 2 seconds. Anything over 8, they're going to find you creepy. So you need to break that. You're just staring at somebody. So if it's over that, you go, you know what? I see you probably need to think about it. But if you think of something, I can be reached at, and give them your contact information. Okay. But you have to have your elevator pitch ready. You have to be your best advocate in order to get where you need to go. So as you're doing all that and you're doing your advocacy, I want you to stay core to a few things, right? Again, the old Uncle Joe sitting on the rocking chair telling you about, life. Over the years, I came up with a couple things. One thing that I call the leadership lessons from someone who's still learning. And I feel like even as you're moving up in your career, and even as I moved up in my career, and even as I advocated for myself, there were a few things that I kept core, and I want to share them with you. First is, you don't know what you know. You have to always be curious. Don't go in thinking that you know everything. You do not, and you never will. In fact, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. That's the whole saying. The older I get, the more I realize how dumb I am, right? So you don't know everything. Always be curious. So if someone asks you something, no, I don't want to do that. I did it before. Yeah, be curious. There might be some part of it you don't know. You should lead people and manage things, right? Guidance over direction. You want to give guidance. You lead people. You don't manage them. Right? You want to provide guidance constantly. If you're not mentoring someone, you should think about that, because it could mean you're not leading anyone either. And I mean, even if you're a student, for you students that are there, we need you to mentor our next generation of respiratory care students, right? Which are high school kids that are looking at you as their role models, right? And if you're in a leadership role, you should have someone that's out there that you are mentoring, okay? The next, you are a role model. So demonstrate the behaviors you expect. People are watching you. And again, if you're a student, there's a kid watching you. If you're a manager, there's a staff that's watching you. If you're a staff member, there is someone who's a student that's watching you, right? And there's a patient that's watching you. And don't assume that it's always someone higher in the hierarchy is not looking at you as a role model. I told you about Mosafar. I looked at him as a role model, and he reported to someone that reported to someone that reported to me. He was my role model. Okay. You can't do it all. I call it the 3 piles rules. Use whatever S you want. You're going to have 3 piles. You're going to have a pile of S that you need to do yesterday, a pile of S that you need to do today, and there's going to be a pile of S. Use whatever S you want that you're never going to get to. The one that people get less comfortable is the last one. There's tons to do. If you're active, you're not going to get it done. If it doesn't make you happy, figure out why, and then put all your energy into fixing it. My favorite saying is, if you are not part of the solution, you are the problem. Not part of it, you are. And I will tell you, especially with this wonderful organization, the AARC, that I'm president-elect for and blessed to be president-elect for, I preach this and I live this. I don't want you should, if you see something wrong, figure out what it is and volunteer to help us. We are all a group of volunteers. We need members. We need people volunteering. If you're not part of the solution, you're the problem, okay? You're a continuous improvement project. Don't be so hard on yourself. Progress over perfection. My kids, I say this so often, my kids bought me a t-shirt. You're going to make mistakes. You're not going to get it all right. You need to shake it off and go, what did I learn from this? You do not lose. You don't lose. You win, learn, and losing is a choice. Because if you either win, you learn from it. And if you choose not to learn on it, then you lost. Right? So learn from it. Be okay with progress and saying, you know what? I didn't get that right. My mistake. And the last one, which I think is the most important one, you should treat everyone at the same level of respect you offer your CEO. Everyone. You never, ever know where things will lean. And you know what? That same person that you could be stepping over could have been you, given the wrong circumstance. Or you never know when you're going to need someone. I will tell you that the person who used to sweep and mop the floors when I was an educator, I started mentoring him, and then he became a clinical engineer when I was a manager. And I left and I stayed in contact with him. And I came back, good 10 years later, he had 2 master's degrees, and he was my first hire as an executive director, Rob Redenhuff. And so that just shows you, right? Imagine if I didn't treat him well when he was sweeping the floors and didn't see his potential. Because no matter if you're sweeping floors or not, everyone has potential, okay? So in closing, what I'll say is you are going to have to be your greatest advocate. You have to be, right? Your path is not going to be linear, so you're going to need to move left and right. Remember the career advancement formula. And know that this is not a peer-reviewed formula, but it's performance plus preparation plus relationships plus visibility. And when you multiply that by opportunity, that's where career advancement happens. Success is not owned, so don't get too comfortable. You do something great, that's great. But now you got to figure out what you got to do. And you got to figure out what's next for you. What's the next step? What's the next thing I'm going to learn, right? Next doesn't always mean getting a whole new castle. Sometimes it's just knowing what the next brick to put down. And do you have an elevator pitch? You should practice it. Make sure you know what you want and you can say it quickly. You want to share, but be humble. If people are dropping their head and walking away, maybe sharing a little too much. There is a balance. And I know people go, well, how do you know the balance? You need to be a little bit more observant, right? And then last thing you remember, as I said, you are your greatest advocate. When you perform, when you prepare, when you build relationships, visibility, all those things are you being your best advocate. And then when the opportunities come, you'll be ready. So with that, I will say thanks for having me. And if you ever want to find out what's next for you, if you Google Joel Brown, what's next for you, it's a TED Talk. No, I don't get paid for it, but it's there for you to use. Thank you.